Greetings everyone. My name is KVR Manohar and I'm pursuing my BTech at a lovely professional university. And today I'm thrilled to take you on a fascinating journey into the world of database management systems. But hold on, we're not stopping there. We'll be diving deep into the ear diagram of the CRED app, unlocking the secrets behind its deficient data organization. Now, why is this so important? Well, DBMS or database management systems play a pivotal role in the tech world, ensuring seamless data storage and retrieval. This video is a backstage pass to the digital architecture of CRED and the world of database management systems. So let's dive into our topic, ER diagram of the CRED. So let's making a complete ER diagram of CRED. Let's understand what is an ER means. ER basically means entity relationship diagram, an entity relationship diagram. So it is basically a visual representation of the relationships among entities in a database. Uh, so like what are the relationships, what are the entities? So before going into the ER of CRED, let's know the basic entities and the relationships and the attributes what of the CRED. Like so before knowing them, let us know what is an entity means. An entity basically means an real world object, a real world a real world object, such as an person, a place, a thing, or concept. Okay, that's what an basically an entity means. So like one of an example of an entity can be in a CRED app. We can take as an user. A user is a real world object and is a person. So an user is an example of entity. And let us go into the another keyword, that is an attribute. An attribute. So what does an attribute means? So like even humans or place or a thing or a concept, it has some properties, right? So how are they defined? So that's what an attribute does. So an attribute is basically the properties of an entity. Yeah. Okay. Uh, no, that is wrong spelling. So yeah, an attribute defines the properties of an entity. So let's have an example, shall we? An example for an attribute can be, let's take, if user is an entity, then what are his properties, like the name, his age, his address, and whatnot, maybe his phone number. So these can be the so this can be the an attributes of an user. So attributes are like the characteristics or the properties that describe an entity. So let's go to the another term of an ER diagram. So that would be the relationship. Okay, a minute. Relationship. So I guess this one needs no explanation because a relationship basically describes how the entities are related to each other. Let's say that uh, let's take two entities, suppose a teacher and a student. Okay, let us take a teacher as a T and a student as an S. Okay, like how are a teacher and a student related? A teacher teaches a student, right? So And this is how the relationship between a teacher and a student works. A teacher teaches the student. And so let's move on to the next keyword. That would be a primary key, right? Okay, the name itself describes something more important. A primary key is something that is an unique for an entity, and it always has some value, has a value. That means it is never not null, and it is unique for every entity. Like the primary key of one entity is not same as that of the another one. Let's take, okay, let's have an example, shall we? So like, if we take two users, okay, and user 1 and user 2, okay, the primary key that are common in both, I mean both, they are common in both but are different. That would be a name. Like the name of the user 1 is not is equals to the name of the user 2, right? So in this case the primary key is the name, which is different for both users. So as it is different, their names would be, let's take as name 1 and 2. Okay, that would be name 1 and name 2. Okay, means two users, two different names, and the name is a primary key. So they have name, and they are like, they doesn't have any name, and their names are unique. So let's go to the another another type. That would be a foreign key. Okay, the name itself has something, right? A foreign key may not be unique, and it can be null. Okay, like we can tell a foreign key is like the pure opposite of an primary key. Uh, can be null. Okay, so primary key in one table can be a foreign key in another table. Like if we take two tables, let's say that okay, let's say that an user and user name in one table can be used in another one. So that for an instance is used as a foreign key in another table, and it can be unique, and so it's not unique at this point. So, and it's not unique and it can be null. Like it is not always so mandatory that something needs to be filled that can be taken from another table, right? So it can be null, unlike the primary key. So these are some of the basic terms that are present in an ER diagram. And once again, an ER diagram is nothing but a visual representation of the relationship between entities. Like the one we took as an example earlier, that would be a teacher, teaches student. So that is how are they related. So this is an brief overview of what an AR diagram is. So now going on to our topic, that would be the diagram of CRED. Diagram of CRED. So okay, it's not scrolling. So maybe I have to. Okay, so I think this can sum it up. So diagram of CAD. So like so far, and so here the we are going to have an, here, so we will be building an diagram for CRED. So before going to build an diagram for CRED, like let's divide it. So it's easy dividing and easy looking at parts then looking at the whole picture. Okay, so like let's start with the entities. Okay, entities of CRED. Okay, so what can be the entities of CRED? As I said earlier, an entity is something that is a real world object, such can be a person, a place, a thing, or a concept. So Okay, I haven't discussed about CRED yet, right? So CRED is basically a card membership payment platform, like where for every payment you make, you will be rewarded. Okay, like so the advantage of CRED is that it is being a one-stop platform for paying your credit card bills. You also earn rewards. Like how does it not feel good, like you're paying for something and then you're getting reward for that. It's a losing something and getting something, so that's a win-win, right? So and that is one basic advantage of the credit. And credit is like, it's like, pay your credit cards and your earn your rewards. So like, so that's what credit means. So like, let's go with the entities of credit. So the entities of credit can be end user, like the one who uses the credit app, the credit, the product which is going to purchase if he does purchase anything, and the transaction that he does to make it, that he makes to own the certain product. And then the merchant, of course there will be a merchant. If there is a product that is going to be sold, then someone is needed to sell it, right? That is the merchant. And next would be the store, where the user can buy something that is sold by the merchant. And the loan, where the user can take up some amount. Okay, so these are the basic entities of cred. And okay, sorry for that. So like, these are the entities. So like, every entity has a attribute. So does the entities of cred has some attributes. So like, let's discuss about these attributes, the attributes of the entities. Okay, so let me take all this. Okay, that does it. So let's go with the first entity. So uh, that would be the user entity. That would be the user entity. So what would be the attributes of an user entity? Okay, like before me drawing the different attributes and the users, I would like to discuss another topic. So that would be the shapes. Okay, we are making a diagram. So like, every diagram has some different shapes, right? So what would be the shapes that we will be drawing now? Okay, for instance, the entity has the shape of a rectangle. This is what an entity looks like. So we have to, every time we represent an entity, that would be in a rectangle shape. And then, so that is how an entity is represented in a ER diagram. So going on to an attribute is represented in an oval shape, a shape like this. Yeah, that does it. So that is how an attribute is represented. So how is the primary key represented? So a primary key is represented as same as the attribute, but there's a catch. It has an underline. So yeah, and people may confuse an attribute for a primary key, but there's a difference that the primary key has an underline under the name of the attribute, if that is the primary key of that certain entity. And then, how is an relation? Yeah, of course. How is an relationship represented in a diagram? That is using a diamond. And how is a multi-valued attribute represented in a relation? Multi-valued attribute. So there's a difference here, like a multi-valued attribute is represented using two ovals, not side by side, but one in other, and an oval, and there's gonna be another oval inside this one. Yeah, that's perfect. So, like, what is a multi-valued attribute means? Uh, we seen like we have seen a primary key, we have seen a relationship. But what is an multi-valued attribute? Means it has many kinds of it has many attributes. For like we can take a date. A date has a month, the day, and the year. So it has like three different attributes, right? Each specifying its own value. And so these are the basic shapes that we are going to draw in an ER diagram. This is the shape of an entity that is nothing but a rectangle. The attribute shape is an oval. The primary key would be represented in the shape of an oval but with an underline inside it. And the relationship would be represented in the shape of in a diamond. And the thing is that the relationship between the user, between one entity. Okay, let me one entity and the other entity is connected through the relation is connected to the relationship here, and we would have to write what kind of relationship that would be. Like we as I said earlier that a teacher teaches student. So the word teaches will go inside the diamond shape. So now yes, yeah, teachers, it would be the teacher, this would be the student. So the relationship would be like this. Teacher teaches the student. So the relation would go inside the diamond shape. So this signifies the relationship between the entities, the teacher and the student. And this is all about the shapes that are represented in the ER diagram. So now as we know what would be the shapes, so now let's continue our topic that we stopped earlier. So let's go with the attributes of each and every entity that is present in the CRED. So our first entity that would be simple, that would be the user entity. Okay. So what can be the basic possible entities of an user? So an user has an user ID which makes him pretty unique, and we can say that the user ID is a primary key here because every user has a different ID specified to them, or else there would be chaos, of course. And the next attribute in the user entity that would be the username. Yeah. So this specifies the name of every user. So the next attribute that would be, oh sorry, that would be the email. Okay, along with the username and user ID, there would be the another attribute that is the email of the user, and the last attribute that would be his phone number. So here we can see that there are four attributes in the user entity that is user ID, the username, and the email and the phone. Like user ID is an unique one, like which is the primary key in this entity, and every user has a different kind of user ID. So this makes it is a as a primary key, of course, and the username, which it is also a simple key, like it is different for everyone. So like let's go on to the next entity that is present in our CRED ER diagram. So that would be the credit. So how does it differ from user? Like there is no much difference, we can say that. Like a minor changes will make it another entity. So they that would be the credit ID, which is the primary key in this entity, of course. And a credit ID is different for every user, so which makes it a primary key, and it records the credit in the database. And next would be the user ID, of course. That would be the user ID. So it relates the information, it the user id, sorry, my bad. So the retrieval of the credit information associated with the different kind of user that is using. And the next attribute, that would be the credit score. Credit score. And this would be the user's credit worth. Like for for every payment he make, he earns some amount, like some points. So that can be accounted for his credit score. Like it provides the user financial health and risk assessment for the lenders, which in this case can be the merchants or anyone. And the last attribute, that would be the limit. Like it defines the amount of credit that the user can utilize. Okay, so like moving on to the next entity, that would be product entity. So as seen in the previous two entities, there is a primary key that differs it from the next entity. So the primary key in this would be the product ID, which is different from the rest. Like each product has its own uniqueness, of course. And so the next would be user ID, of course, because it enables tracking of products that is purchased by the individual users. And the next one would be not credit score, of course, that would be amount. Like it indicates the amount of product that is available. So and the last one would be store. Okay, didn't see that coming. Last one would be store. So it provides in which store that the particular product is available. Like product that is available in the grocery one or in the other one, or so, etc., etc. So this is all about the product entity. So now let's go on to the next entity, that would be transaction, of course. Okay, so this is the transaction. So as seen in the previous entities, like there is a transaction ID which is unique, and the primary key. So the transaction ID basically defines the transaction records in the database. So next would be user ID. And why? Because it allows the retrieval of transaction history of the individual users. Like it tells the a particular user has done this many transactions. Like it shows the transaction history of a particular user. And the next would be the amount, same. The sum of money the involved in the transaction. Let's say that I have transacted a money of 10,000 rupees. So that would be stored in my user ID under the amount, in also the amount attribute. So the next attribute would be the date. So like it provides a timestamp for when the transaction has occurred. So like in many cases we know that a transaction has occurred, but it is also important that it has occurred in the certain amount of time, and it also acts as some proof against uh, that we had did that certain kind of transaction. So moving on to the next one, that would be the merchant. So this is the merchant entity. So As seen in the previous entities, even the merchant entity has an unique ID, that is the merchant ID, which is different from every other ID, and it is primary key. It is used as a primary key to identify the merchant records in the database. And the next one would be name, like it specifies the merchant's name or the business name that he is doing. And the next one would be the category. So this will be the category, like under what category, like it classifies under what category the merchant is selling the product. Like we can say that the nature of product that a merchant is trying to sell. uh, for instance, let's take an example, like merchant is selling a grocery one, like he can be categorized under the grocery one, like the other one can be categorized under the electrical one, depends on the type of product that he's selling. So our next attribute would be location. We know a merchant is selling something, but it is also important that from what location or from what address that he's going to sell a certain product, right? So this signifies the location of the merchant. So this is all about the merchant entity. So now go to the let's go to our next attribute, that would be store. A store is basically nothing but where the products are available. So the first attribute in a store entity would be the merchant ID. Like it associates the store with the merchants, and like it identifies the linking stores to the specific merchants. Like a merchant may sell his product to a particular type of store only, or to many other stores. So like this attribute here signifies that. So the next one would be not name, of course. The next one is the user. The next one is the user ID. Like it gives description of the user, like which user uh, is is buying a product from this kind of store. Like it provides details about the user. So the next attribute in the entity store would be the transaction ID. Like it uniquely identifies like each transaction that occurs in the store. Like whenever we go to a store, we make some certain kinds of transaction and some certain amount of transaction, right? So this transaction ID here, it links the store entity with other entities, such as the customer, the one who is making the payment here, and the product, the payment which is being done to buy that product, and the transaction, of course. And and I guess I forgot the main one, that is the store ID here. So that would be store ID. So as I said in the previous entities itself, a store ID is something that is more unique, and it is the primary key of this entity. Like it tells us the store records. And the next and the last entity in the year in our CRED year diagram, that would be the loan one. So for as such an every entity there is a unique ID. Even loan has an unique one, that is the loan ID, which signifies the loan in the database. And the next attribute in the loan entity, that would be the user ID. So like it gives description about the user, like the user, like the amount of loan, that kind of information, the information about the loan with the user. And the next attribute in this would be the amount. Okay, amount attribute, like a user takes an loan, right? So like amount here signifies the amount of loan that he is taking, of course. So it's not a big thing to explain by me. And the date, Of course, like as we saw in the previous entity itself, I guess in the transaction one where we saw the date, like at what time the transaction has occurred. Same goes here, like at a particular time or a particular date time exactly signifies the time at which an user has taken some certain loan. So this is all about the entities of the CRED app. So like we discussed about the entities and the attributes. Now let's go on to the relationship itself. So let me give again a brief explanation of what would be the what is a relationship means. So and relationship is something that describes the relationship between two entities, of course. Like as I said earlier, the relationship between a teacher and a student is that the teacher teaches the student. So now let's have a brief discussion of the relationships that are present in our ER diagram. That would be the user. So let's discuss the relationship between the user and the credit. Okay, as I said, as I explained previously, uh, the users, the entities are represented by rectangles. So here the one of the entities that where you are in this relation is that the user entity, and the next one would be the credit. So what would be the relationship between them? Like and user pays credit, right? The relationship between them would be the user pays credit. And remember the relationship should always be in a diamond shape. So this would be the relationship between a user and a credit. So what kind of relationship is this? The relationship between them would be one to one. Means like each user in the cred app has a corresponding credit record, right? So the relationship ensures that every user has their credit related information stored within the system. So including this code, including the credit store, credit limit. So like an user can pay. Oh, sorry, this is this is may pace. So like an user can pay for one credit, right? Like there will be one user and there will be one credit, and the relationship between them would be the pace. So let's go on to the another type of relation. So that would be between the user and the product. So an user buys product, that would be the relationship between them. And what kind of relationship that can be? That is one to many. Like an user in the credit app can buy multiple products at the same time, right? So like me being a user can buy like many types of grocery items at the same time. So like this can be an one to many type and many relationship. So another relationship involving the user would be between the user and the transaction. This one seems kind of confusing. Okay, let me draw that again. Another relationship that would be involving an user is that user and the transaction. So we in the previous one we saw that an user buys and buys product, right? So like for buying a product he has to make a transaction. So that means an user makes a transaction. And what can this be? Even this can be a and one to many and one to. many relation. Like he can have various transfer. He can have, and sorry, my bad. Like a single user can have multiple or various transaction records reflecting their financial activities in the credit app. So this can be like a one to many relationship, and another relationship that is involving the users. So that would be the loan. Like an user will take a loan, right? So that means an user takes loan. And what kind of relation can this be? Like many, yeah, of course. Like an user can have multiple loans facilitated through the CAD app. Like a single user may have taken more than one loan, like with each loan recorded with separate unique user loan. Let's say that he has taken a loan one, which is recorded in in a separate ID, that is the loan one ID. And whereas he again took another loan, and that is recorded under the loan 2 ID. So that means that any single user may have taken multiple loans out there, and with each loan being recorded individually and separately. So that means even this is also an one to many relation. So next relationship that would be like the transaction. Okay, sorry. Transaction and the merchant. Okay, we seen user making a transaction, but how is there a relationship between a transaction and a merchant? Like what we are buying is directed towards the user, right? Is directed towards the owner, right? The owner in this case is none other than the merchant. Like the transaction made by the user is directed towards the merchant. And this is however not a one to many, and this is a this is a many to one relationship. Like multiple transactions can occur with a single merchant, and this is like a many to one relationship, that several transaction records can be associated with a single particular merchant. Like he's selling some, like a merchant sells various products. So a person, like a user being buying them, he makes a multiple transaction to that one towards that one merchant. So this is however a many to one relationship that we had so far. So let's go with the next relation, that would be the merchant and the store. Yeah. So a merchant sells his goods somewhere, right? That is nothing but the store. So for that he maintains his store. Like a single merchant may have many stores, like through which he can sell multiple goods. Uh, this will be nothing but a one to many relationship. Sorry, a merchant can have multiple stores to users. This one to many relationship signifies that a single merchant may have multiple stores available for users to of use. So let's go with the last relationship in the diagram of our CRED app. So that would be an relation between the product and the store. Yeah, we've seen merchant selling the product. We've seen a transaction happening towards the merchant, and let's see the product being in the store. How do you like? How do we signify the word, like the term that is connecting the product and the store? So that can be available or any other. In this case, we can use available. Like a product is available in the store, the availability, like it is available or not. So how can this be? What can this relationship be? Like A store can have multiple products, like it can have some groceries, electrical appliances, some stationery, some books, some pens, some etc. All in a one store, right? So that means we can take that as an many to one. So the relationship between the product and a store would be a many to one relationship. And so this is all about the relationships that are present in the AR diagram. So far we have discussed the entities and the attributes, the shapes, and the relationship that are present in the AR diagram that we will be going to draw now. So as we completed so much of those topics, now let's go to the core part of our video. That would be the making an entity, an ER diagram of ourselves. Okay, let's start so simple. Let's start with the user. Okay, sorry. Okay, I guess it's not visible that much. Let me draw that again. Yeah, guess now it is visible. So the first entity, that would be the user entity, as we discussed that. So the the attributes in the user entity, that would be the, so the first attribute, that would be the user ID itself, which is unique, as we discussed earlier. Now let's go with the second attribute. So that would be the user name, and the next one, that would be the email of the user. So and this is the last attribute of the user entity. So that is nothing but the phone number of the user. Yeah, and let's go with the next entity. Okay. Mm, what shall what shall be our next entity? Okay, let's go with the credit. Okay, okay, that would be the credit entity. Sorry. And what are the attributes, as we discussed in the as we discussed earlier, the attributes in the credit entity, that would be the credit card ID. Let's write it the short form, credit card ID. And the next attribute, that would be the user, the one who is going to use that, the one who is going to use the specific user, the one who is going to use that specific credit card. So the next one would be the payment, of course, the payments that he's going to make using the certain credit card. uh, the last, the one of the favorite for many credit users, that would be the credit score of that entity. credit score. Yeah, so far we have only done two entities. Now, what would be the relationship between the entity credit user and the credit? And we have done that earlier. Just right now, the relationship between the credit and the user would be that would be nothing but a pace, right? Like and user pays credit, right? Yeah. So that gives us one relation and two entities so far. And let's go with the another entity. Okay. So that would be the let's go with the transaction. And what can be the entities in this one? Of course, the transaction ID, of course. And the next one that would be the most commonly used attribute, that is nothing but the user ID. And the next attribute, that is nothing but the amount of the transaction that's being done at that particular time. And the last one, that would be nothing but the date. Yeah, and this sums up the entity relation of the transaction one. So I guess we also talked about the relationship between an user and a transaction, right? Who does the transaction? That is none other than the user. Okay, I guess we have no place here left for that. Okay, let's go here. Okay, and user makes a transaction and they are related like this. Okay, let me join every attribute. Oh, sorry. So far we have completed like three entities, guys. So now we can go with a fourth one, that would be the merchant. So this would be the merchant. So yeah, so the attributes in this are quite simple, like I discussed earlier. So that would be the merchant ID, the name, the category of the category to which the merchant belongs, and the amount. No, no, my bad. That's the location. Okay, the location to which the merchant belongs. The merchant ID, and then the category, and then the address. Okay, the address of the merchant, and then the name of the merchant. Yeah, I forgot the main one, of course. The name. Yeah, like, are there any relations for the merchant? Yeah, like, uh, a merchant sells something, right? Like, he has this product, and then whenever a transaction is happened, that money is directed towards the merchant. So here we are having a relation quite near. Like, see, the merchants like the transaction, so even the merchant entities is very close to the transaction entity. So a transaction is directed towards the merchant. Yeah, and then we have completed like four entities. I guess we still have like three more entities to cover up, and then let's go with the let's go with the loan entity. Maybe we can do that right here. Yeah. So what are the entities? Oh, sorry. What can be the attributes of a loan? Yeah, that would be the loan ID, of course, which is the primary one and the main loan ID. And the next attribute would be nothing but the user ID, which it specifies the one who's going to take the certain loan. And yeah, the next one would be the amount. Yeah, that would be the amount of the loan that a user is taking usually. Okay, I'm sorry for that. Amount, and at what date the user have taken this loan. So let's take it here. So that is the date. And I guess we also have an relationship including loan, right? Yeah, what can be that one? Oh, maybe, you know, this one is a quite good one. Like, that would be the loan and the user, of course. And user takes a loan, right? So, okay, where would be our relationship go? Yeah, let me move it here a little bit. Okay, so, and user takes a loan. So, yeah, let's minimize it. Yeah. So far we have done five entities, and we are real close to complete this video of us. So let's go with the next entity, the product entity. Yeah, what does the product entity have? We discussed that earlier. So that would be the product ID. Okay, sorry, the product ID. The next one would be the user who's going to take that specific product. user ID. And the next one that would be the store ID, in which store a particular product is available, so that we might know that the user to go where and buy it in the CRED. The next one that would be the amount, like it would specify the certain amount of product that is available in the store at that particular time. So uh, even there are some relations for the product itself, right? Like who's going to buy the certain product here? That would be nothing but the user itself. So here we are having another relationship for a really good user here. Okay, let me draw that again. Okay, yeah, there's no space for that, I guess. Maybe, yeah, I forgot to draw the ER diagram, my bad. Yeah, the main important is the specific relationship between the two entities. So what would be the relationship between a user and a product? That would be the when user buys a product. So this is the relationship between the user and the product. Okay. So far we have done six entities completely and their relationships. So moving on to the last one, uh, that would be the store entity, of course. I guess that we have not covered anywhere. Yeah, that would be the store entity. And yeah, the let's go with the attributes, the store entity. Okay, sorry for that. Yeah, let me erase that. Uh, the primary key in the store attribute, that would be store ID, which is unique for every store. And the next attribute in the store ID, that would be the merchant, the one who is going to sell in that particular store. And the next attribute that is present in the store entity, that would be the user ID, like the user who is going into the specific store to to buy that, in going in the sense like visiting virtually so that he can buy that. The last attribute of the store entity, so that would be the transaction ID. Yeah, the transaction ID. Yeah, I guess we have covered every entity so far, and let's complete the relationships. So what would be the relationship that we might be missing now? So that can be between the merchant and the store and the product and the store. Yeah, like like a product, like we have to know the availability of a certain product in a store, right? So that would be the relationship between a product and a store. Okay, let me make it a little more. Yeah, guess that should do it, I guess. That would be the relationship between a product and a store. And even there is a relationship between the merchant and the store, like a merchant maintains the store, right, so that he can sell his goods, maintains the store. Yeah, so this is the overall diagram, overall yeah diagram of the CRED app. I guess that this looks like a bit more clumsy. I'm sorry for that. Like, let me explain it thoroughly for you. Like, we have seven entities so far. That is the user, the transaction, the merchant, the store, the product, the loan, and the credit. Each entity as its separate, each entity as its separate unique attributes, and there is also an unique relationship between every entity, like the relationship between an user and a transaction entity is that the user makes a transaction. That is the relationship between an user and a transaction. And the relationship between an user and a credit would be that an user pays his credit. And the relationship between a user and a loan, like, is that a user takes a loan, like he takes a loan. And the relationship between an user and a product, that would be an user buys the product. So the next relation, that is that nothing but the relationship between a transaction and a merchant. And user and transaction is directed towards the merchant for his product that he's selling. And the relationship between a merchant and a store is that a merchant maintains the store. And the next relation, that would be between the store and the product, that is nothing but a merchant, sorry, a store, a product, like the availability of the product in that particular store. And see, I guess we come, I guess we came into our grand conclusion in our video. Okay, sorry for that. We came to our grand conclusion. We came to the last of a video. So this is the a brief of what an ER diagram of CRED app looks like. And I would like to thank my sir for enabling me this opportunity to represent myself. And thanks.